This is Pass the Rock.
We'll jump into the gambling portion of this show because I put it all over the place. You got to see all of the stuff this week. Everybody's talking about it. So obviously we got to as well. I'm probably not going to come at this with too many different angles than what you've heard, but I won't waste your time on any other stuff. I'm going to give you kind of the meat and potatoes. I'll give you my thoughts on this, and I'll let you, the viewer, kind of interpret the future for yourself. So this has been a pretty hot button issue all season. I think 2 weeks ago on the main podcast, we talked about Rudy Gobert's money sign gesture, how thick the fine was, how interesting that was, being a conversation. I think Patrick Moore took the side of, as the NBA trying to put their player in the place. And I took the side of, for Rudy, it was, they had probable cause to do that, to do what they did. They had every reason to. So I think that was just sort of part of the reason why I didn't quite hate it. I didn't think of much of it either at the time. But now I think you do have to kind of look back at it and say, man, this has sort of started a dialogue now, right? Because what Rudy did was he got the media having the desire to write these stories, have the desire to explore it more, have the desire to ask other people questions. And that was obviously producing some interesting stuff. I've taken a couple clips and we'll talk about those. But then the next shoe kind of drops. And now we realize that DraftKings and FanDuel are going to be doing live bets from the League Pass app, which, it pairs with what Adam had talked about a couple years ago. He said the words, we need to take gambling from the underground and into the spotlight, right? Or into the sunlight. So I think it's pretty fair to say that the league has been ready to make these moves for quite some time. And I think or the way they're going to sell the story is that they're doing what's right. It's prohibition. We're going to make sure we're monitoring those alcoholics, right? We're going to make sure we're monitoring DWIs, right? Like we're going to make sure that our culture doesn't get too obsessed with alcohol, right? You know what I mean? We've been down this path before, but and I'm really not that anti-gambling. I'll get to that as we go, but there is some of this where you have to laugh from a league perspective, where it's like, I understand this is bringing in incredible gobs of money. It makes perfect sense. I do understand. At the same time, this is where the more Adam kind of tiptoes this line, the more he's going to look like a politician. I mean, he'll be earning that paycheck, but naturally the reputation hit of being the face that has to answer all these questions is a part of it. And there's a recklessness to gambling that we know we're going to hit. And like I said, I'll get to that, but let me get to these statements that have been made, because I think that's really the reason why I'm even considered doing so much time on the show and kind of pushing back the tears back for this, is because this really it really needs to be thought about and talked about, not just by people like me, but like by a lot of folks, a lot of people, people in Washington, people in fucking Secaucus, New Jersey, which is where this is at, right? It's a conversation. I mean, people in every media outlet is going to have some real hard conversations about this. And I'm sure it's probably still 5 to 10 years before we see the ramifications of this fully, but that day is coming. Coaches and players, a lot of interesting conversations here. Halliburton kind of had the most, or the least concerning statement of these three that I've chosen here. To half the world, I'm just helping them make money on DraftKings or whatever. I'm the problem. In which that's right. I mean, that is a fair way to look at it. I mean, we do want to celebrate athletes. We want this all to mean something, because, yes, there's money involved, but like, if we all stop caring about this, that starts to dry up from every side, right? Every angle. So on one hand, gambling is amazing for keeping the attention span and grabbing new audiences. On the other, it's going to feel very soulless, and it's going to feel very gross, especially at the beginning, right? So I think for Halliburton to kind of speak that not feeling human aspect of this kind of makes a lot of sense right now. But then we jump into far more concerning levels when we get to JB Bickerstaff's comments. Now, the first comment, very simple. He's talking about this point spread and how he'll have people to yell at him to leave guys out so that they can cover the point spread. But obviously, because it's 82 games, I just went into 15 minutes worth of injuries. There's no reason to be giving in to these insane people who think that their one night prop bet, whatever, is more important than the longevity of a career of the franchise piece that you have. Like all the different factors that go into making decisions to play guys. You could leave somebody out for the wrong second every game. You know what I mean? That pressure is felt by those coaches and in those front offices. So obviously, like, it's pretty ridiculous to hear that. That's literally what JB said. But it got far more concerning whenever he mentioned that he gets regular text about these issues, as well as doxing his family in his own house. So for a lot of reasons there, that alone should just take this to a way bigger factor, especially in Secaucus, New Jersey. Because, like, look, the advent of social media has introduced all kinds of hate speech into the world, right? And the ability to do so like that. So, look, you can't fix it all. You can't, there's some level of this that unfortunately all of these people are dealing with, because any weirdo around the world can just get on the internet and start doing weird shit like this. And when you're one of the most famous people, or when you're tied to something as popular as a professional sport, this is just sort of the world you have to live in. And I accept that. But at the same time, doxing families, and specifically if these text messages are relating to bets, right? If we're going that far on this isn't just insane people. This isn't just rival fans. You know what I mean? This isn't just trolls. This is seriously just about one issue. I think that raises it even more levels, because it's already giving us a clear history. I mean, we know the history of gambling, but it's kind of like the history of gambling so far has been illegal. So all that stuff doesn't necessarily count in the legal world, right? Because now we can fix all of that. We can have we can take it from the underground into the sunlight, right, Adam? Like, that's the way we're going to talk about it. But in that reality, we've all grown up with this stuff. The gambling isn't new. We didn't just invent it. We just legalized it. So it's an interesting thing to look at from that perspective, because I get it. When you're famous, you have to understand that doxing and terrible things like that are a part of the game. You're going to have to figure out better security for your house. You're going to figure out better security on your phone lines. You're going to have to practice more caution than the average person. It's not fair, but it's the reality. At the same time, when you're the league, that's a very significant concern that's directly related to how you conduct your business. And then Eric Spoelstra's final comments, I thought, were, far less worrisome than that, but essentially told a story about how last season a Miami Heat fan somebody in the crowd, had to be removed because they were yelling at the Miami Heat bench and specifically at Victor Oladipo, because he did not take a shot that would have probably extended, again, the cover or the points total, whatever it was. And of course, the game was already decided. Like I just mentioned, there's sportsmanship to this. There's a lot of people that care about these things. Like, this isn't just all for the moolah. And that's something I'll get to in a second. But that's another very concerning issue. And it's something that, to be honest with, I went to go see Mavs Wolves game some years ago. I think it was Luka's rookie season. And Derrick Rose has a great game. It's very early season. Derrick Rose has a great game. And the whole time I'm sitting a couple of seats away from, a Mavs fan, whoever this guy is wearing Mavs crap, absolutely just yelling and screaming at Derrick Rose to tear his knee. And now, I'm not made of a lot of money, but if you remember, that team was trash. The Mavericks had been trash. So it was very easy for me to find $50 seat by myself, about 6 rows behind the goal on the Mavs side, I believe. And still just yelling, Derrick Rose, tear your knee, Derrick Rose, tear your knee. So the in-stadium conduct has always been questionable at any sport. You have Buffalo, they're throwing dildos on the field. There's don't even get into Europe with the racism and just the general anarchy. So that stuff always kind of is going to happen, but it is notable again the specific nature of this issue, because we're talking about very specific situations here, and it does become more of an issue. That's pretty much it. I mean, from the quote stuff, there was also some Tim Donaghy quotes, which I got to shout out the New York Post for just staying the who they are with making sure to reach out to that man and publish that story, because I gave it a click. I shouldn't have, but I did. I gave it a click and I read it, and it was like kind of obvious stuff. So it wasn't like I was going to bring it up here. I just thought it was funny how shameless we get about covering these things. I mean, look, I'm doing like 10, 15 minutes on this in the middle of the show, just because I thought it was that necessary. And because I know the SEO is probably going to be pretty nice on YouTube. Let's be honest. But either way, I have to come forward and be honest with you guys on a couple of things here. So in 2020, I was working in a nicer company and was able to make a little extra cash. And I bought 9 shares of DraftKings. And I did so because I had just spent the year and a half prior in Austin, kind of around a lot of new people. So, you're making small talk, you're meeting a lot of people in ways that, you're like, who are these people? And it's like, this guy likes sports. And it's like, oh yeah, sports guy sports. And I always kind of noticed this stuff, especially when I was in college. But there was, there's always levels to fandom. There's people who really, really love it, that really grow up with it, probably played it a lot, have a different sort of passion for watching it, right? Maybe like the strategy of it, whatever it is. Then there's always some people who've been more on the fantasy side of it, right? Like I like to be a part of community. I like to be a part of something. And I don't know a lot about football, but I know that fantasy football is kind of a crapshoot because guys can get injured and we don't really know who's going to get the points all the time. So like, even though I don't really know football, I can kind of participate in football with these people, and I can learn and meet more people. And so I think a lot of times we default to that, right? And what I really noticed, especially when I was in Austin, was that there was a ton of grown men, recent college grads, obsessed with 2 things: Barstool Sports and gambling their asses off. Like everything. Like this was the main hobbies. Was like, and on one hand, good for all those girlfriends. They're probably lucky they're not fucking around. But like on the other side, sorry about your credit debt in about 3 or 4 years whenever this addiction fully rears its ugly head. Because a lot of this stuff is, it's really kind of gross in a lot of ways. And I think that part of the culture, not just to separate those people, it's not just be mean to them, because it's very broad. It's happening everywhere. Barstool is itself, in my opinion, very responsible for this. So look, I hedged my bet and I bet on the thing I hated the most, because that's kind of how capitalism works. I was like, this sucks. I hate what this is doing to the sports, but holy shit, it's making a lot of money for sports. I should get in now. And it didn't really work that well for a while. And now a couple of years later, this shit is looking pretty nice. And it's because guys like LeBron James are signed to DraftKings. You know what I mean? DraftKings is on League Pass. So I understand the hypocrisy here 100%. I only did it. I don't have other shares of stuff. I don't know how to play the market a second of my life. I've never even considered it. Do you see how much basketball crap I have? I don't have the bandwidth for more. So, there was just a moment in life where it kind of smacked me in the face, and it was like, this is about to be the biggest thing ever, good or bad. So just gamble on it, right? And I gambled on it. Like $400 worth of gamble. So really not that bad when you think about the long-term investment thing, but that's not what these gamblers do. This $400 that I put into this stock that is eventually going to pay out probably way more these guys gamble that in a week on crazy parlays. Like insane parlays, like absolute Charlie at the whiteboard and It's Always Sunny levels of batshit. Um, you know, so part of me, wants to play the curmudgeon and be like, my grandfather instilled a love of sports into me. It was not only the strategy of thinking a game, but then taking that and channeling it in your body, understanding, watching what these great people are doing and capable of, because they've put so much time and effort in. Thinking at the beginning that you can't do any of it, can't come close to any of that, trying it, and getting as close as you can for your own personal, journey, right? I mean, we're not all going to be NBA players, right? So like to at least harness a little bit of that, to watch them live out what you only could want to do, right? Like what maybe your knees don't allow you to do, maybe your situation didn't allow you to do, whatever it was. You get to see that, and that's the love and the admiration you have of both the game and the people that play it. And I think that was what a lot of sports was built on, right? We had too much free time in early America. All the pro leagues basically just exploded after World War II, because a lot of things exploded after World War II, and that is not a dark joke. It wouldn't actually work because it wasn't after that everything exploded. But anyway, not the point. It's something that for me, it's always been hard. And like I was really stubborn about fantasy. I don't even like playing fantasy sports. I'm like, I don't. What the fuck does this matter? Like this is me putting more bandwidth into something that literally doesn't matter, because I want to be a part of a community though, right? And like that's the biggest issue. And so I think for people like me, maybe less community driven folks, it's easy to sit here in soapbox. But on the other side, there's a lot of people who need that, want that, that human interaction that they can't get in other places. And fantasy and gambling is such an easy bridge of the gap. So we're talking about a lot of things here that basically mean that gambling is here to stay, regardless of how you feel. In fact, my grandfather, who taught me all this love and admiration for sports, I mean, what do you think he was doing at the 19th hole every Sunday at the golf course, right? Like, come on, this has been around. My dad was filling out those little boxes when I was a kid, hanging out the bar with them. And yes, that's how we do it in Texas. I don't recommend it, but it's just life here. Is what it is. So that's just kind of the way I genuinely look at it. I guess encouraging responsible gambling is the appropriate way to move forward with this. I would always suggest that. One time I remember hearing Gene Simmons say, about gambling, like, I grew up with nothing. Why would I gamble that away? You know what I mean? And legitimately looked clueless at someone when they were asking him, why doesn't he gamble? When he goes to Vegas all the time too, right? I'm similar. I'm a similar person. Sometimes the way you grow up with money, it changes who you are forever. And there's no amount that would ever fix that, right? But at the same time, like, encouraging responsible gambling, but then also promoting gambling is just a double-edged sword. We saw an advertisement that went viral this week on Twitter where it was a bus advertisement for, I think, FanDuel. And it was basically a guy who was like, oh, your car's broken down? I know how you can fix that. That's crazy. Like that right there is exactly the problem. like perfectly the problem. Like if your advertisement sounds like it could be on a South Park episode, maybe throw it back in the vault. That's all I'm saying. Maybe just don't kick that idea out into the public. So even if we do encourage responsible gambling, this is going to be such slow and painful processing. Like, just like similar issues like the opium crisis, things that we've had to deal with in America, they're not going to react to them at the appropriate levels until there's like 10 years of evidence, until we're down a path that people cannot come back from quickly. That's just how it works. So I guess the other part that I say, and I say to any of your friends, and obviously like, share, and subscribe is always the motto here, but especially this point, please, if you're going to gamble, have fun with it. Set a budget. You should already have a budget if you're a grown adult. I'm sorry, I hate to be the old man in the room, but you got to have a budget. It's the only way you're going to make shit work in life. Have a budget. budget out whatever's a funny sum amount, right? $50, $100 a week, whatever. I mean, I don't know your story. I'm not trying to tell you to limit it that high or low or whatever. Put a budget out and play to that. Have fun with it that way. Be responsible about it. Limit whatever it needs to do. I mean, these apps aren't going to make it easier. They're not going to do that. And if you get so good at this too, by the way, like, it's not like these people are nice. Like, when you get good at gambling, all they do is just find ways for you not to gamble anymore. Like, they don't just go, "Oh shucks, what a great winner he is. I'm just going to let him keep robbing us." That's not, like, if there was that many successful gamblers, the whole industry wouldn't work, right? Like, the house always wins. You have to understand those things. Like, that's not just movie quotes from back in the day. Like, the house literally always wins. So here's the thing. Again, just please be responsible. No one can hold you accountable but yourself, unfortunately. You have people that love you. You have plenty of other good things in the world that you can bond with other people on. Watch some movies. Find some other stuff that doesn't cost moolah. Go back to fantasy sports without the money side of the fantasy part. Because now at this point, I think they're both tied into each other. I don't know. I'm terrible at both, right? So probably the least best person to help you there. But be careful, because I'm not just telling you because I think, when I tell you some of these things about these teams, I'm pretty strong. I'm pretty sure about them, right? Knowing what I know about basketball, knowing what I know about these teams as they're moving out through the season, I feel pretty good about those guesstimations. But they're guesstimations. Again, I started the show by telling you I had Auburn to win it all. And I feel good about that. And they lost the first game to Yale. So I know when I'm prognosticating and when I'm telling you just point blank reality. 5 to 10 years, most of us are going to know people who have been crippled by gambling addiction. That's facts. It's not actually facts yet, so don't actually quote this and put this anywhere. But if you don't feel that way, I just don't know what to tell you. Anyway, soapbox coming down.
This is Past the Rock.